Good morning, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. And one of the reasons why it is a failed state is that the nation has been ruled by the de facto one-party state dictatorship of Zanu PF. And the party itself is a party of thugs, of ruthless thugs. They have no respect of the law and the rule of law. The only law they understand is the law of the jungle. Survival of the fittest. Eat or be eaten. Dominate or be dominated. It is all very well when they're fighting outsiders. When there is infighting in-house, there is fear. The fear is palpable everywhere. Because each one of them know the other one is just as ruthless as they are. All pretense to rule by the law is just a myth. Zanu PF is undergoing yet another one of its factional wars, and it is hotting up. Today, there was supposed to be a politburo of the party, and VP Chwenga arrived at the party headquarters surrounded by a bloated security detail. Even when he entered the building itself, the security detail were around him, as if the fear that he may be assassinated, even when they are in their own party headquarters. And this is him arriving for the meeting, for the politburo meeting.
And indeed, as is the usual, Vice President has entered, which means any minute from now, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zimbabwe.
Well, whatever was being discussed there, it wasn't a very pleasant subject. That's from observing the body language. And when the meeting did take place, it looked like the body language got even worse. This is after the politburo when Mnangagwa was addressing the audience. pardon. Seem to have a problem. The body language at that meeting said it all. There was definitely nothing pleasant about it. My apologies, I'm still seem to have a problem with playing the video itself. But what matters there is this is a party that has used brute force to silence its opponents. And now it looks like they're turning on each other. This has been reenacted over and over again. In 2017, Mnangagwa was at the receiving end of some of that brutality. Mugabe was the big man then. And Mnangagwa ended up being dismissed from the party. And not only that, he ended up having to run away, to run for his life, or fear for his life. To run away to Mozambique and then on to South Africa. This is what happens when you have got a regime that has no respect of the rule of law, that does not care.
Zanu PF is a colossal revolution.
My pardon there. It seems like I've got some problem with my technical. Okay, I think we are ready for the video now to be played.
We have and the vision to deliver for the good of the people of our great motherland is back. My fellow citizens from across the country, for their clarity, national consciousness, and patriotism. This has seen us by malcontents and the rogue, delusional elements bent on disturbing our peace, our unity, and our harmony. But now, our motherland, Zimbabwe, will forever be a constitutional, democratic, and sovereign nation with all of us living in unity and in peace and in harmony. Vanokura. Vavarambe havachikura. Zanu PF is an unstoppable trend. Zanu PF notevera gwara romusangano nguva dzose. Gwara romusangano ndokutungamirira. Our party constitution is sacred. It is like roots and trunk of a tree, and we, the members, are its branches.
I think the nervousness of the VP is understandable. The trouble with a lawless party, a nation, is that you know the other side is not playing by the rules. They may pretend that they play by the rules, but you know they are not. Who doesn't know that Zimbabwe is not a democratic country? VP Chiwenga himself would know that they did not win the 2023 elections, as much as the president would want to pretend that they did. Zanu PF's change of leadership has never been a democratic process. The last president, Mnangagwa Mugabe, was removed by a military coup in 2017. They could not remove him any other way. This issue of the party follows the constitution is just nonsense. Zanu PF, even when it held its elective Congress, by the time the members met, it was always for the coronation. The party would have seen to it that, for instance, Mugabe would have seen to it that by the time they go to the Congress, all the provinces would have endorsed him as the only candidate. And therefore, then instead of it being an election, it would be just a coronation. And this is what the party has seen throughout its history. It is widely believed that following the 2017 military coup, the two gentlemen here had agreed, a gentleman's agreement, that Mnangagwa will serve one term, then hand over power to Chiwenga. The coup itself, of course, was unconstitutional. There was nothing in the party's constitution, much less the nation's constitution, to say there could be a coup. But how else could they have got rid of Mugabe? Particularly since they themselves were the ones behind the various election rigging that had been part and parcel of Zimbabwe ever since the country's independence in 1980. So the gentleman's agreement was Mnangagwa will serve one term and hand over to Chiwenga. Now he has served 2 terms. His end of second term is supposed to end 2028. And this whole political partisan crisis has been precipitated by Mnangagwa drive to stay in power beyond 2028, when he's supposed to leave. His argument is that he is delivering Vision 2030. And Vision 2030 is that Zimbabwe will be an upper middle income nation in 2030. Although there is no evidence that the economy has significantly improved, if any at all, since he took over in 2017, he is adamant that the economy is on the recovery. And what is more, that he needs to stay in power to deliver Vision 2030. While the nation's constitution says he cannot stay in power beyond 2028, he is now maneuvering to change that constitution. And this is what has precipitated this factional war in the party. And it is hotting up. There is no doubt that Mnangagwa is determined to stay in power. One of the reasons why, of course, he's determined to stay in power is that power is sweet. And these dictators, they believe they are the best thing to the nation. They are the only ones competent to govern. Mugabe was doing exactly the same thing. He would occasionally be asked, who is going to be your successor? And he would tell them in no uncertain terms that there is nobody suitable to take over from him. Of course, one way of making sure that there was nobody suitable is to surround yourself with individuals whom you know yourself they are incompetent. And he had surrounded himself with individuals who were incompetent. And Mnangagwa has done the same thing. His determination to stay on beyond 2028 is on the grounds that it's only him who can deliver that Vision 2030. Although, of course, the truth of the matter is there is no economic recovery. If anything at all, the economy has got progressively worse and worse. The tragedy for the nation is this economic and political crisis is bound to get worse. Right now, the nation has ignored the pressing economic challenges the nation is facing, and is all hands on deck to deal with this political crisis. God knows how it's going to end. And many have got good reason to fear that it could easily become very violent. The 2017 military coup, many believe that a few people were killed, but otherwise the nation was spared a bloodbath. This may not happen again. This time we could be looking at a situation where there is a bloodbath. The die has been cast. The two sides have made their positions very clear. Mnangagwa, for his part, is determined to stay in power. Chiwenga and his supporters have made it clear that he must go. March 31st will be the D-Day. It's supposed to be a protest, an uprising, as Blessed Geza has named it. Even if the 31st March uprising does not force Mnangagwa to leave, there can be no doubt that this uprising will continue in one form or another and will only escalate. At the end of the day, Mnangagwa will have to leave. I think the tragedy for Zimbabwe is that we have failed to realize that we needed a political system that allows peaceful transfer of power. While Zanu PF may fail to do it in-house, we should have had a constitution that allowed free, fair, and credible elections and peaceful transfer of power. After 45 years of independence, it is disappointing to note that we have failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections. We have failed to do something to stop the Zanu PF rigging elections. God knows we had many golden opportunities to do so, but they've all come to nothing. And now we find ourselves dragged into this mess. We really are holding our breath that Zanu PF factional war does not drag the whole nation into a nightmare. It will easily do so. All because for the last 25 years at least, we have failed to implement the democratic reforms which would have dismantled this Zanu PF dictatorship. That is our tragedy. Thank you very much. And I pray and hope that this Zanu PF factional war would end well, or without dragging the nation any deeper into the mud, into the abyss. But as an outsider, of course, there is nothing we can do but sit and observe. Those who were able to join, thank you very much for joining. I hope you'll be able to do it again in future. Good night.